You are using Rome right now, not a metaphor, not a figure of speech. The road outside your window, the pipe carrying water to your tap, the concrete holding up the building you are sitting in. These are not modern inventions that happen to resemble what ancient engineers once built. They are, in a very real historical sense, the same systems, refined across centuries from blueprints that originated in the Roman world. Rome fell, its armies disbanded, its emperors vanished. But what Rome built into the physical and institutional fabric of civilization proved more durable than any emperor's ambition. Tonight, we examine 10 Roman innovations that did not merely survive history. They became the architecture of the world you inhabit today. At its territorial peak, the Roman Empire maintained roughly 85,000 kilometers of paved road, a network so precisely engineered that portions of it are still in use after 2,000 years. Roman road construction was not intuitive. It was systematic. Engineers began by excavating a trench, sometimes as deep as 1 meter. They then layered the base in sequence: large foundation stones, followed by compacted rubble, followed by a binding layer of gravel and lime mortar, and finally, a surface of fitted stone cut to interlock under repeated weight. The road was deliberately crowned at its center and sloped on both sides, a design choice that channeled rainfall away from the surface and prevented the erosion that destroys modern roads within decades. Modern highway engineering follows this same layered logic. Drainage, compaction, surface gradient. These are Roman principles. The phrase we still use, "all roads lead to Rome," is not merely poetic. It was once a geographical fact. Modern concrete has a recognized lifespan. Exposed to seawater, it begins to degrade within 50 years. The concrete used to construct Roman harbor breakwaters 2,000 years ago has done the opposite. It has grown stronger over time. The distinction lies in a material called pozzolana, a volcanic ash found in abundance near the Bay of Naples. Roman engineers mixed this ash with seawater and lime to produce a hydraulic cement that, when exposed to salt water, triggers a sustained chemical reaction. Rather than eroding, the material crystallizes internally over decades, filling its own fractures and increasing its structural integrity as centuries pass. Researchers studying Roman maritime structures have identified mineral formations inside the concrete that took hundreds of years to develop. Engineers at universities across Europe and the Americas are now examining this ancient formulation as a potential answer to the environmental cost of modern cement production. The solution to a 21st century problem may have been mixed in a harbor workshop 2 millennia ago. At its administrative center, the city of Rome in the 2nd century of the Common Era received approximately 1 million cubic meters of fresh water per day. To put that figure in context, it exceeded the daily water supply of many modern cities of comparable population. The 11 major aqueducts that served Rome transported water across distances of up to 90 kilometers using nothing but precisely calculated gravitational gradient. Roman surveyors and engineers achieved a consistent decline of roughly 30 centimeters per kilometer, enough to maintain flow over extraordinary distances without pumps, without electricity, and without modern instruments of measurement. The infrastructure beneath your city operates on the same hydraulic principles: gravity-fed water distribution, covered conduits, settling reservoirs, and public access points. Rome codified these elements into an urban system that engineers in medieval Europe and the Renaissance studied and rebuilt whenever they could afford to. The aqueduct did not disappear. It went underground and became your water main. In 46 BCE, a Roman administrative reform established the solar calendar that, with one subsequent adjustment in 1582 CE, became the Gregorian calendar used by the majority of the world's nations today. Prior to this reform, Rome operated on a lunar calendar of 355 days that required periodic, politically managed corrections. A system so manipulated by officials for personal advantage that by mid-century, civic dates had drifted nearly 3 months out of alignment with the actual seasons. The reform introduced 365 days divided into 12 months, with a leap day inserted every 4 years to account for the additional quarter day in the solar year. The months we use, January through December, are Roman inheritances. So is the concept of the leap year. When you schedule an appointment, file a tax return, or simply know what month it is, you are operating within a cognitive framework that a Roman administrator formalized more than 2,000 years ago. The hypocaust was a Roman heating system that warmed floors and walls from below by circulating hot air through a network of raised tiles and hollow wall cavities. It appeared in elite private homes, public baths, and military installations across the empire from Britain to the Levant. The engineering principle is straightforward. A furnace positioned at one end of a structure generated heated air that flowed beneath a floor raised on small stone pillars called pili. The air rose through ceramic tile channels embedded in the walls before venting through the roof, warming the entire structure uniformly and without open flame inside the living space. Modern radiant floor heating systems, now considered a premium feature in residential construction, operate on precisely this principle. Heat is distributed from below the floor surface using either warm water in embedded pipes or electric heating elements. The experience of warmth rising from a heated floor on a cold morning is a Roman architectural gift that architects rediscovered and remarketed as an innovation. In the 1st century BCE, Roman authorities began publishing a daily official notice board known as the Acta Diurna, translated approximately as daily acts or daily events. Posted in prominent public spaces throughout the city, it carried records of senatorial proceedings, military dispatches, public announcements, notable births and deaths, and civic news. Copies were reportedly made by scribes and distributed to wealthy households and officials in the provinces. The content mixed governmental record-keeping with what we would today recognize as general interest reporting. This practice, the daily, systematized publication of civic information for general awareness, is the direct conceptual ancestor of the newspaper, the news bulletin, and the digital news feed. The Acta Diurna did not merely inform citizens. It established the principle that a functioning civic society requires regular, accessible, public information. That principle has never been abandoned. The legal systems of France, Italy, Spain, Portugal, Romania, and the majority of Latin America are classified as civil law systems. Legal traditions derived, through centuries of adaptation, from Roman law. The legal infrastructure of the European Union itself is built on Roman jurisprudential foundations. What Rome introduced was not merely a set of rules, but a theory of law. The concept that legal principles should be written, codified, systematically organized, and equally applicable to those within the jurisdiction, not subject to arbitrary individual judgment. Roman legal scholars developed doctrines of property rights, contractual obligation, inheritance, and civil dispute resolution that were compiled into the Corpus Juris Civilis by scholars working under Emperor Justinian in the 6th century CE. This compilation became the foundational legal text of medieval European universities and served as the template for the Napoleonic Code, which in turn shaped legal systems across 4 continents. The presumption of innocence, the right to a defense, the distinction between civil and criminal proceedings. These are Roman legal concepts that have never left the room. Prior to Roman innovation, the dominant format for written documents in the ancient world was the scroll, a continuous sheet of papyrus or parchment rolled around a central rod. Reading required unrolling from one end while simultaneously re-rolling the other, and locating a specific passage within a long text meant working through the material sequentially. Roman writers and administrators began experimenting with wax tablets bound together at one edge, forming a hinged format that allowed pages to be turned and consulted individually. By the 1st and 2nd centuries CE, this format had been adapted to papyrus and parchment, producing the Codex, a book in essentially the form we recognize today. The Codex offered structural advantages that transformed how knowledge was organized and transmitted. Indexed access, the ability to read at a marked page, and a format compact enough to carry easily. Every book on your shelf, every physical document you have ever read, exists in a form that Roman administrators invented as a practical upgrade to the scroll. Archaeological excavations at Roman sites across Europe and the Mediterranean have recovered surgical instruments of remarkable sophistication. Bone-handled scalpels with iron blades, bronze surgical hooks, forceps, retractors, catheters, and bone drills. Many of these tools were found in organized sets, suggesting a systematic and professional medical practice. Roman military medicine in particular drove significant innovation. The challenge of treating battlefield injuries across an empire that maintained legions on multiple continents simultaneously demanded standardized procedures, trained practitioners, and reliable instruments. Military physicians known as medici developed surgical techniques for wound closure, foreign object extraction, and fracture management that represented a substantial advance over earlier Mediterranean practice. Instruments recovered from Roman contexts bear a striking similarity in form and function to those used in modern surgical procedures. The scalpel, the retractor, and the bone drill have not been superseded. They have been refined. The conceptual toolkit of the operating room has Roman origins. The Roman arch was not a Roman invention. The structural principle had been understood in the ancient Near East. What Rome did was deploy the arch at a scale and consistency that no prior civilization had attempted, using it as the primary structural unit for bridges, aqueducts, amphitheaters, triumphal monuments, and administrative buildings across a territory spanning 3 continents. From the arch, Roman engineers derived 2 further structural forms. The vault, a continuous arch extended along a horizontal axis, allowed the construction of enclosed corridors and chambers of unprecedented width. The dome, a vault rotated around a central vertical axis, produced the defining monumental form of the Roman imperial period, most notably realized in the Pantheon in Rome, whose unreinforced concrete dome, completed around 125 CE, remained the largest in the world for more than 13 centuries. The arched bridge, the barrel-vaulted corridor, and the domed civic building are structural forms that passed from Rome into Byzantine, Islamic, Romanesque, Renaissance, and modern architecture without interruption. The arch above a doorway, the vault of a railway station, the dome of a government building. These are Roman structural ideas that architecture never found a reason to abandon. There is a familiar narrative of Rome, the grandeur, the expansion, the gradual unraveling, the fall. That narrative is accurate as far as it goes. Empires do fall. But the measure of a civilization is not how long its borders held. It is what survived the border's collapse. Rome built in systems, not just roads and aqueducts, but frameworks of law, civic administration, measurement, and architectural logic. These systems proved more resistant to time than armies or emperors. They embedded themselves into the infrastructure of successor civilizations, were recovered and rebuilt during the Renaissance, were codified into modern legal and governmental institutions, and persist today as the invisible architecture of ordinary life. You crossed a Roman road to get where you are going. The water in your glass arrived through a Roman hydraulic concept. The date on your calendar is Roman. The book on your shelf is Roman in form. The legal rights you hold were articulated, in their foundational principles, by Roman jurists. Rome is not the past. Rome is the structure beneath the present, and the more carefully you look, the more clearly you see it. I Am History Rebuilds, because that is precisely what we attempt here, not simply to report what happened, but to reconstruct what it meant and why it still matters. If that approach resonates with you, subscribe so that the next reconstruction finds you here.